The California Classic and the Salt Lake Summer League are both over. What did we learn about Dalton Knecht and Jared McCain? Plus, who are some 2025 prospects to remember as a continuation of yesterday's episode coming up on Locked On NBA Big Board. What's up? My name is Richard Stayman. You might know me better as Mavs Draft. I do NBA Draft scouting reports, mock drafts, and other work on my Substack, mavsdraft.substack.com. Appreciate everybody who continues to make Locked On NBA Big Board the first listen of your day, even after the draft and into Summer League, which is, after that, the dead period of basketball. So we really appreciate everybody. Today's episode is brought to you by GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. So the California Classic is over. The Utah Salt Lake City Summer League is over. What did we learn about the players there? A lot of these guys, so we have already talked about, James and I talked throughout this week about some of the players throughout the week, like Zach Edey, Cam Spencer, some other guys as well in those summer leagues. So we've already captured a bunch of that, and they didn't play in Wednesday night's game. So not really a ton to talk about there. They'll play again in Vegas. Vegas starts up tomorrow. James and I will have a preview show for that in Summer League at that point. For those who don't know, starts at 4 o'clock Eastern. The very first game is Cleveland versus Orlando. Then you have, six other games throughout the night. And generally what they'll do on the first full day, some point in the weekend, usually it's the Saturday, is they'll pin number 1 versus number 2. So I don't see Atlanta just yet when I'm looking through this. So on Sunday, just as a quick preview, I think is the game. Actually, I didn't put 1 versus 2 this year. They did. I'm really shocked they didn't do Bulls Hawks just to get Matas and Ricochet. Instead, they did Spurs Hawks, but still an interesting matchup to say the least. We'll cover that a little bit more tomorrow. Don't want to talk too much about that. Want to focus a little bit on what's already happened. So the California Classic came and went. Really, the wins and losses doesn't matter a ton to me. So let's talk about the Salt Lake Summer League first. I think the first name we have to throw in here is Jeff Dowden. If you're not familiar with Jeff Dowden, he was I'm blanking on the entire path, but I know he was with the Orlando Magic organization at some point. He's really floated around the NBA, was with Toronto up and down in the G League, in the NBA. Technically, yeah, he was in Orlando. Played for the Wisconsin Herd, played with the Bucks. This has all been in the last 4 years. He's been, again, in and out of Orlando for the last 3-4 years. Went to Rhode Island, had a pretty successful year. And almost every year he's gotten better in the G League. And in the Summer League this year, in the, 3 games that he played, he ran one of the best pick and rolls I've seen in the Summer League so far. Everything was efficient, had shot almost 60% from the field in Summer League through 3 games, had 16-4 assist to turnovers. Like, it was really impressive stuff. And I think he just had a really good record there. Like, he's a guy that's going to stand out now when you look at these veterans in the G League that may be worth having on a 2-way. He might be one of those players. Flipping the switch to one of the youngest players in this, Jared McCain, or really inexperienced, I should say, because he's actually not the youngest person that was in the tournament. But Jared McCain had a pretty rough night on Wednesday. 1 of 9, 2 points, 1 turnover, 4 rebounds, 2 fouls, or 1 foul, drew 2. Not a good night for him. So I think there's a lot to be said about, like, look, man, he's a shooter. He's going to miss. It's also Summer League. You really can't react too much. This is not even the same roster he's going to have. Had a lot of on-ball creation stuff, just didn't fall. It's not really much to read into. Now, if it's the whole summer it's like this, maybe there's something there. But he also had good games beyond that. Like, even in the game against Memphis, he had 12 points on 30% shooting. Like, yeah, the efficiency wasn't great, but at least he's still cracking double digits when given the chances. Same thing, 6 of 15 in his first Summer League game, 3 assists, 1 turnover. 2 steals. Like, I don't think there's a lot to read into there, to be quite honest. And I think if you're at this point, if you're somebody who's like already drawing the conclusion from anything that happens over Summer League, you're overreacting. But especially with Jared McCain, like, he's a shooter. He's going to have bad nights. Like, he's not going to be perfect. And in a bad draft class, a guy like him, he's going to have horrible nights. That's okay. He's also going to have really good high nights, and he's a shooter. He's going to play off of Embiid well. And guess what? There's nobody even remotely close to the caliber of Joel Embiid playing in Summer League right now. Even among any future stars, there's no one as good as Joel Embiid right now. So not really worried about that. Flipping over to the Memphis side, I really liked GG Jackson. They were both in the Salt Lake one. And I know it's the California Classic, so I kind of skipped around here. But GG Jackson, I thought he could have been better. One of the big things I wanted to see from him, like, yeah, he scored okay, pretty inefficient, but it was a lot of on-ball reps, and he got his points. I would have liked to see him be more of a look to just improve that playmaking, and he absolutely did not. A lot of inaccurate passes, a lot of bad ball handling, turnovers where he just lost his footwork, things like that, and I would have liked to see that improve a bit, but unfortunately it just didn't, and sometimes that's okay. And I think really he's a guy where you have to look at what's going to happen in Vegas, where more eyes will be on him. I mean, to be quite honest, Salt Lake just doesn't draw the kind of evaluators and everything like that Vegas does. So I'm interested to see how he does there. But he's another guy. I think those are really the only ones from the Salt Lake Summer League that I think were worth talking about that had games in the last few days. Just because there wasn't, you can only do so much with these non-Vegas Summer League games because Vegas just is the one that has the eyes on them. These guys aren't all going super hard. Ricky Council played well. I'd probably give a shout out to him. Deontay George shot a lot and made a good amount of his shots. Taylor Hendricks looked good in general. I mean, he had a simple game in terms of play style, but still did a lot. David Jones was playing the passing lane as well. Other than that, I didn't really have too many notes. I still found it weird that Walker Kessler played in multiple games. I thought he was done after the first one, and then last night on Wednesday he went 2 of 7. Not very promising. And 3 of 5 the first night. It's puzzling to me that he was there. And then the whole reports come out, they're trying to trade him potentially, that they were fielding offers. I don't think they're actually trying, but that they were fielding offers. And I don't know. I think that whole situation was kind of bizarre. I really don't even know what to make of it. But there's more, I think, going on in the California Classic. And I know I kind of switched this up. This was supposed to be the California Classic first, but figure they're both pretty 1A, 1B, can do both. So let's talk about the California Classic in just a moment. But first, let's talk about GameTime. GameTime is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on GameTime app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, GameTime takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. I actually have used GameTime within the last week. Used it to buy some Nationals tickets against the Cardinals. Got to see my seat before doing so because if you are not in the Northeast right now, there's a heat wave going on, and I was not going to be sitting in the sunlight during that. I escaped the Texas summer. I wasn't going to sit right back in it. So I was able to sit in the shade because of that. Thought it was really nice. So shout out GameTime. So take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download GameTime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, second segment here. Let's talk about the California Classic as promised. So the California Classic had some more action going on in it than the Salt Lake Summer League, I think. And the Kings had 2 teams. Team China played in it. The Warriors were in it. The Heat were in it. Kind of random. The Lakers were in it. The Heat and Lakers played on Wednesday night. And actually, that was a really big game for Dalton Knecht. A lot of people talk about Bronny James. I've said it before. The defense is good. Like, he plays like somebody who is his dad's size, but he's 6'2", give or take an inch. And it's tough to make a lot out of a guy who's a long-term player. And I think that's as much as there is to say about him at the moment. Reading into him, like, it gets clicks, whatever. I don't really care. I'd rather have the integrity and talk, like, not integrity, but like, just talk about somebody more relevant that's going to make an impact tomorrow, that has a real chance to the path to the NBA, to having an elite skill. Someone like Dalton Knecht, who had 20 points last night, 7 of 18 shooting, not very efficient, but I'll tell you, he looks the part of a primary off-ball player. Yeah, the shot creation has been rough through 2 games. One of the things that's driven me nuts is I've seen so many overreactions. You go to a message board, you go to Twitter, whatever it is, you go to Reddit. They're all saying the same things. They're like, how did this guy ever get top 10 looks? He can't create a shot. It's not going to scale up. It's been 2 or 3 games in the California Classic. Let's calm down. At the minimum, also, he doesn't need to create a shot because he's playing with LeBron James. So it does not matter. And I think Dalton Knecht did a really good job last night of looking like an off-ball player. Yeah, he missed some shots. I think at the beginning he looked pretty rushed on a lot of them. After about his 5th shot where he missed rim, I would say right after that, he was pretty confident and pretty successful in everything else he did. Yeah, he missed some, but makes and misses aren't everything you're looking for in California Classic. It's a lot of processes, how you set it up. There were some turnovers. Again, I just didn't really think any of them were like red flags. There are a few things about like getting to the rim and finishing at the rim. Could have been better. Not a ton, but also he was overshadowed, I think, by one of the best undrafted free agent pickups. I wasn't huge on Keshad Johnson, but then I saw him get picked up by Miami. Man, you draw up a perfect fit. That's it. He's a hard worker. He's extremely physical. He's going to make you work for everything that happens on the court. And the team that embodies that exact mantra is the Miami Heat. His stat line last night was 21 points on 8 of 14 shooting, 3 assists, 8 rebounds. He had 3 steals and 3 blocks. And that was in 30 minutes. That was an impressive game. I was skeptical. My biggest thing about his game is would his shot translate up? And, he's actually, this was the only red flag for him last night was the jump shot. He went 1 of 4, from 3. It's 25%. The statistical anomaly was my issue. He took 1 attempt per game for the entirety of his 4-year career at San Diego State. And in those 4 years, he had 1 year shooting above 30%. And it was his absolute lowest volume. He took 21 threes. So color me surprised where this year he shoots 2.5, shoots 38%. The free throw percentage still is low. I still don't know how successful it'll be, but let me tell you, with Miami, it doesn't matter. Because if you can hit one of your 2 threes you're getting every single night, that number actually doesn't really matter, and you're playing a much easier game to succeed. Because if you go 1 of 2, 0 of 2, whatever, that difference isn't super massive in the grand scheme of your minutes. Whereas if you're playing 30 minutes and your only shots you're getting, like in that tight window, it actually is much easier to make up with defense. And I think Miami's going to utilize him really well as a small ball 5, and that's where that shot really doesn't matter as much as long as you have the threat to space the floor. That's going to be more important than the actual makes and misses. So I really liked what I saw from him. Another Laker I liked, and obviously Keshad's on the Heat, but going back to the Lakers, is Colin Castleton. I mean, I think he's somebody that could easily step on an NBA court right now. He needs to be a little bit better about finishing near the rim and just being that interior presence, but he's on the right path. I mean, 18 points. He had two steals, 4 blocks, 3 assists to 0 turnovers, 11 rebounds. Like, he had a monster game too. And he only played 2 games. He played against one of the Sacramento Kings teams. Like I said, they had 2 of them to even it out. Plus, this year, San Francisco got in the California Classic. So that's why they have 2, 1 for Sacramento, 1 for San Francisco. Let's talk about some of those Warriors, though, and the Kings. So they played against each other last night. Again, those were really the only 4 teams playing. I don't think Team China and the other Kings team played. So they kind of crossed those 2. So Trace Jackson Davis, he was pretty good. He's another guy I'm kind of shocked is there, but I get it. Like, you're a rookie, you're a bench player, you're not exactly there. So I get why he is there, but at the same time, just kind of weird. But I think he looked overall good, played his exact same game, finished off dump offs, cuts, things like that, played defense. Didn't have to do anything too much out of his comfort zone, but I liked what he did. Made some nice passes. Not all, actually got 0 assists. I was going to say not all of them were assists, but none of them were assists. So more of the same for him. Nothing to worry about with him despite mediocre stat line in 20 minutes. But another guy I really liked was Isaac Jones. If you've listened to the podcast, I've praised Isaac Jones in the last few weeks. He was one of my late risers. I saw him at Portsmouth this last year when he's a very interesting story. Just let's move it back beyond Portsmouth. 5 years ago, I think he was loading trucks, goes to JUCO. Maybe it was overlapping. I'm forgetting the timeline, but he was loading trucks to kind of make some money playing JUCO basketball. Transfers up to Idaho after 3 years at JUCO. This was his last year of eligibility, moves up to Washington State. So we're talking about 3 different levels where he moves up JUCO to the Big Sky, to the Pac-12. Then he goes to Portsmouth after being on all Pac-12 honors, dominates Portsmouth, probably the best player there, goes to the G League camp, graduates from there and goes to the NBA Draft Combine, plays well in the scrimmages, and now he's on a 2-way. Like, that is about as ideal of a step-by-step ladder that you can climb in today's NBA as a draft prospect. And he had 10 assists to 0 turnovers this entire tournament. So I thought that was really impressive. He was a guy who, yeah, some of them were handoffs, whatever, fine. But he still made some really impressive passes, found a way to make everybody better. I think he's going to graduate from that two-way program pretty simply. I don't think that's much of a debate for me. Some other Kings that had some big nights. Keon Ellis had a ton of usage. If you watch some Sacramento games, they ran him at a lot of point guard throughout the year this year, especially when Fox wasn't playing. He got more of that run being able to be a point guard. Struggled with the true point guard ability, but was good as a scorer. So I think that's promising. Had on-ball scoring, off-ball scoring, but 1 assist, 6 turnovers. Not ideal, but you live with it. Drew Timme, I feel like, is a guy you have to mention at this point. Still one of the best college bigs of the last 10 years. He shot well. Like, his jumper looked okay. He can't play defense, though, and I think that's his big limiter. His game is just very different from college with the usage. He has to adapt to a smaller role. Not slower. But he's good out of the pick and roll, has that push shot, has a jumper that's semi-reliable. It's just not enough, and I think he's going to float around there and then eventually make his way over to Europe. Another guy I liked, though, was Isaiah Crawford. I thought he was really interesting for Sacramento. He was a guy who I've seen a lot of dating back to his freshman year at Louisiana Tech. Was a 5-year guy there, which is really impressive in today's environment where there's only like 2 guys that stayed in the mid-majors all their career that were in this draft, which were him and Dylan Jones. And Isaiah Crawford's a steal. If he didn't have knee injuries, I think he'd absolutely have been a first-round pick. He's that good. He has a lot of the similar frame to Kawhi. Looked really good. I mean, he was getting a lot of off-ball 2-dribble chances where he would catch the ball through a handoff, run it as a pick and roll, and then be able to hit the floater, get to the rim, hit a jump shot. Thought there was some really nice stuff with him there, and then obviously he can play some defense too. So, and then speaking of defense, the last guy on this, Ethan Thompson. Ethan Thompson's a guy who I had seen at Oregon State. I really liked what he brought to the table. He went I just lost it there for a second, but he went 4 of 8 for 13 points. Yeah, that wasn't right. But he had a lot of defensive plays. The defense was fantastic. Yeah, 7-7 assist turnover ratio, whatever. Shot very well. 58% was the leading scorer in terms of total points for the Warriors Summer League team. Shot really well near the rim. The 3-point ball fell. He was getting to the rim a lot and getting to the line. Rebounded pretty well. And then on top of that, though, I mean, he had 8 steals in 3 games. Like, that's really impressive. That's almost 3 a game. Really a lot to like there. I think he's a pretty solid candidate at this point to be getting that 2-way contract with the Golden State Warriors, or really anybody else. Somebody else can swoop him up if the Warriors don't act quick enough. So he's somebody to keep an eye on. I think he's a fascinating prospect. Again, I saw him at Oregon State. I liked him, but I never really thought he was NBA good. And I'm going to pull up some of his stats here in just a second. So he was a 4-year guy, crept under the radar, never had any stats that really popped. 16 points a game, 4 assists, 4 rebounds, 1 steal. It's like good. But then you look at the percentages, 33% from 3, 81% from the line this year, career best, and 40% from the field. And his field goal percentage really varied, 38, 44, 46, 40. So it didn't really pop. He made the all Pac-12 team only once, which is, this is actually, man, I feel old reading this. I could have sworn this is all recent, but this is actually as late as 2021. And before that, he started school in 2017, so he's a little bit older. I really thought he was more recent than that. I knew he wasn't this year, but thought he was a little bit more recent. And yeah, he's got a thin leash, short leash, but he is somebody who now has a leash. And I think with that, somebody's going to swoop him up on a 2-way, see a guy who's a little bit older, can contribute. He's matured since going overseas. I think he's absolutely somebody that could do that. So I like his game a lot. That's the California Classic recap as well as the Utah Summer League. Let's talk about some of these 2017, not 2017. I'm stuck on Ethan Thompson. Let's talk about some of these future guys in 2025 and 26 that I had seen some comments to discuss. We'll talk about that in just a moment. All right, last segment. Let's talk about some of these guys I didn't get to talk about a ton yesterday. So I'm infatuated with the 2025 draft and the 26 draft. I talked about it in yesterday's episode where, look, these are guys who in the Team USA was the most dominant team I think I've seen them put out, where the closest game is like a 40-point win. And one of the guys I got some comments on was Jaylen Harelson. I'll gladly dive into him. I didn't get a ton into him because he was a lot of garbage time minutes, but it was still, and by garbage time, I mean, there was a game where they scored 60 points in the first quarter. They were up 50 points in the second quarter. At that point, it's garbage time. Like it's really hard to evaluate this group because what was actually competitive. Like after the halfway point of the first quarter, some of these teams rolled over. So it's really hard to make a lot out of it, but I have seen these guys in EYBL, 3SSB, which is the Adidas circuit, Under Armour, although I think actually all of them are on Adidas or EYBL circuit. So let's talk about Jaylen Harelson for just a minute. So I will start out with this. I think he is a really skilled player. He can bully players on the drive. He absorbs contact. He can potentially be a 3-level scorer. Has tools to be good on defense. But I think he's far away. Like I think he doesn't know how to play a bunch of great defense at the moment, especially off the ball, which is a big thing for being a good team defender. So he has the tools, the athleticism to get there. But my biggest concern is his jump shot. I think some of the mechanics need work. It's not exactly a centered shot. Luckily, he's young and it can be fixed. But it would be a lot nicer for him, I think, if he had a better jumper. Let's just pull up some of these free throw stats, actually. So 71% from the line this year in EYBL with his high school Lagomir, I forget how to say it exactly, but you know me, I'm terrible at pronouncing these names. 61%. But actually, it's really limited. They only have a few of their games on Synergy, so hard to actually say. So let's look at last year's. And also, he was playing a year up in EYBL. He shot 77% on over 100 free throws. The year before that, played a year up with the 16s, 74.5. So it seems like he has touch, but did his shot get changed? Because the percentage went low this year on pretty good volume. And even in Team USA, I think he had a poor percentage. Let's take a look. Actually, it's not true. 12 of 15, but small sample size. So what to make of it? Who knows? I think his jumper just still in general needs work because it's one thing to have a good jumper. It's a different thing to have a good free throw stroke. It's kind of my 2 cents. And then the 2025 guy I wanted to talk about, I'll actually give 2. There's 2 guys I really want to talk about. So Trey Johnson, I think, is becoming one of the biggest sleepers. And it's hard to say sleeper when you're a top 10 prospect, but I think he should be in those top 5 prospects rankings. I have him as my 5th prospect at the moment for next year, just because he's such a good shooter. I've seen him a lot in the Dallas area. Even though I'm not there anymore, I saw him a lot when I was there. Saw him play for EYBL, for Lake Highlands. Seen him on both stages before he really blossomed and turned into himself at Link Academy. So just a bit of background. Everywhere he's been, he's kind of been assigned to be the de facto point guard where the team gets him, and they're like, cool, we got him. And they don't have a point guard. And then they're like, well, Trey, you're our best player. Why don't you play point guard? And it's kind of limits who he is because he's a really good ideal wing. It's like that 3-and-D kind of mold, but he can do so much more with the ball in his hands, where if you give him 2 dribbles, he's going to win the attack. So he can be an on-ball player. I think he can do more than those 2 dribbles, but that was kind of what I think the ideal was for him, was say, let him be a first option. You can also play off the ball, think like Paul George in that way, but not necessarily making him Paul George, but he's a great shooter. Pretty much has been able to shoot over anybody, can create his own shot to hit over anybody. If you watch some of his games in the Chipotle Nationals, or even in the City of Palms in December, you can see that shot creation upside. He's really athletic. Again, he had to see like the shot creation for himself and for others has been really impressive. There are a lot of plays where he's off balance, still sees the cutter really well and can make that accurate throw. And it's things like that where it's like, yeah, that's kind of a fluke. But at the same time, you have to have that high level, hit those low probability passes and make those work. That's a great playmaker, does that. So I think he's somebody that could ultimately be that all-around wing in every way. For that, if you're Trey Johnson, let's see, I think he's about 6'6". If you're Trey Johnson and you're 6'6", yeah, it's listed at 6'6". That's a really ideal player, 6'6", all-around wing. I like it on both ends. Another guy that we aren't talking about enough in a positive way that I think the media in general, like just discourse, not any one place, has a tendency to do this with players, where when one player emerges, we have a tendency to lift him up while lowering someone else. And it's a weird thing, and I hate it, where with Cooper Fleck, he just dominated Team USA Select. They called him the best player on the team. That had NBA players on it. including Brandon Miller was on that team. So it's really impressive that he did that. And he absolutely has earned really being the consensus number one. I think there's still an okay argument for some other guys in there, and it's still too early to crown him as like that no doubt number one pick. He's not Wembanyama. He is really good, and I've seen him a lot in person too, Cooper Flag. But I feel like we're tearing down Ace Bailey, who I've talked about Ace before. You can go back and find some of those episodes. I'm sure I forget exactly when they were and what they were. But with Ace Bailey, I think he's the perfect wing. If you created a wing in a lab, it is him. He's 6'9", extremely athletic, has a big frame to grow into, really long arms, has outstanding defensive instincts. I really don't know the last time I saw a wing be such a good shot blocker on the perimeter. It's a weird phenomenon, but he is like, his timing is just fantastic. Now, what people don't like, and actually one more thing, is he comes off of screens really well and can actually create his own shot. One of my favorite moves he does, I saw this live at City of Palms, was where he just did the KD kind of thing where he catches in the mid post, turns on his opposite shoulder, and hits a jumper over double teams. And he does that consistently. Now, people criticize him for motor, shot selection, and shot diet, and some body language. And then also like that he's not a winner, which is the weirdest one. And I just want to debunk some of those while I have a second to do so. To the motor, okay, fine. He looks a little bit defeated because I think he's super competitive and doesn't like losing. He's also a guy who, at the same time, like, he knew what he signed up for, where he didn't play on any of the shoe circuits like Under Armour, Adidas, or Nike. Those are where everybody gets the spotlight. It's pretty rare nowadays not to see anybody in those. You get about one of, I don't know, every top 30 every year at this point. This year was Ace Bailey. And, he kind of knew what he was signing up for. He plays for McEachern High School. They had one other prospect that was really high level, but he had some kidney issues and was unable to play for a lot of the season, in JD Palm. So for him, I think he's just frustrated. He hates losing. And a lot of times that can be misconstrued as bad body language. And I just don't think that's the case. And because of that, I think he has a really good motor. And the shot selection, like I said, he's the only person on the team who really is going to be playing. He's the only prospect that has a chance to play in the NBA. And when you're that good, you're going to take bad shots. Now, when he's playing with Dylan Harper, who's a top 3 prospect, I can tell you for a fact he is going to not take dumb shots. He's not going to settle for these double team shots. He might take a few of them, but he's not going to do it at the frequency that he did this year. And I think a lot of that has to be contextualized. I saw Ace Bailey at, depending on the day, 1 or 2. Cooper is that good, but I do want to see, like, I'm still keeping that option open at this point. I think both of those guys are going to be fantastic. Dylan Harper's my no doubt third player. And then there's Common Malawak, who could easily sneak into that 4th spot. He's 7'2", does a lot of different things on the floor. It's really intriguing, but just wanted to get that little soapbox about Ace Bailey. I think you shouldn't sell your stock. And also, please just give him context. Like, there's a lot of false narratives around his game. So just some food for thought. But in this episode, talked about California Classic, Utah Summer League, and then some other guys for this year's draft, and then Jaylen Harelson in the 2026 draft potentially. He'll be in 2027, 2026 recruiting. But yeah, just some fantastic names to remember. There's a lot of talent that I went over. Tomorrow I'll be talking with James about previewing the Vegas Summer League, the big show. Really excited for that. Thank you so much to everybody who listens, and we'll be back tomorrow.